Tradition 7 is every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. Long form, the AA groups themselves ought to be fully self-supporting supported by the voluntary contributions of their own members. We think that each group should soon achieve this ideal, that any public solicitation of funds using the name of Alcoholics Anonymous is highly dangerous, whether by groups, clubs, hospitals, or other outside agencies. That acceptance of large gifts from any source or of contributions carrying any obligation whatever is unwise. Then, too, we view with much concern those AA treasuries which continue beyond prudent reserves to accumulate funds for no stated AA purpose. Experience has often warned us that nothing can so surely destroy our spiritual heritage as futile disputes over property, money, and authority. The spiritual principle of Tradition 7 is the principle of corporate poverty. Corporate poverty. And then I don't have what that is. Corporate poverty. Responsibility, financial independence. Independence from outside influences. Self-supporting. Self-supporting alcoholics. Who ever heard of such a thing? Yet we find that's what we have to be. This principle is telling evidence of the profound change that AA has wrought in all of us. Everybody knows that active alcoholics scream they have no troubles money can't cure. Always we've had our hands out, time out of mind, we've been dependent upon somebody, usually money-wise. When a society composed entirely of alcoholics says it's going to pay its bills, that's really news. Probably no AA tradition had the labor pains this one did. In early times, we were all broke. When you add to this the habitual supposition that people ought to give money to alcoholics trying to stay sober, it can be understood why we thought we deserved a pile of folding money. What great things AA would be able to do with it. But oddly enough, people who had money thought otherwise. They figured that it was high time we, now sober, paid our own way. Oh, corporate poverty is enough money to meet expenses, but also a reserve for emergencies. So we can do that in our own lives and then within the program. It was soon apparent that while alcoholics would spend lavishly on 12-step cases, they had a huge aversion to dropping money into a meeting place hat for group purposes. We were astounded to find that we were as tight as the bark on a tree. I've never heard that expression before. So AA, the movement, started and stayed broke while its individual members waxed prosperous. Ah, Alcoholics Anonymous, see, yeah. So I was used to spending a lot of money on frivolous things when I was drinking because I didn't really care about anything at all. I'd spend a lot of money on alcohol, and because I drank, I had to smoke cigarettes too. And then when you go to the bars and play big shot and have to pretend like you have money and buy everybody else's drinks to feed your ego, then you're spending more money there. And then I had to look the part, so I had to buy lots of nice looking clothes and pretend like I was a big shot and somebody when I wasn't. And I just spent a lot of money. So when I sobered up, I started being able to be more realistic about money and instead of just paying my bills and then spending whatever I have left over on whatever I want. Now I have to learn what this corporate poverty, which is saving money for emergencies too. So if I'm staying sober and having extra money and I'm not putting anything towards the program that helped me stay sober, then I'm keeping them poor while I'm getting rich. I guess that's what it's saying. Alcoholics are certainly all or nothing people, uncompromising black and white. Our reactions to money prove this. As AA emerged from its infancy into adolescence, we swung from the idea that we needed vast sums of money to the notion that AA shouldn't have any. On every lip were the words, "You can't mix AA and money." We should have to separate the spiritual from we shall have to separate the spiritual from the material. We took this violent new tack because here and there members had tried to make money out of their AA connections, and we feared we'd be exploited. So we took this tack. Okay, the way in which you deal with a particular situation, the direction of your words or thoughts. So we took this new way of thinking because there were members who tried to make money out of their AA connections, and we were afraid, okay, that they would, that we would be taken advantage of, used, manipulated, right? A lot of us, I don't know, I'm speaking for a lot of us. I know I am. We've been manipulated and used and robbed and cheated and lied to and exploited and taken advantage of because it was easy for people to do that when we were drunk. The people that do that are sicker than alcoholics. It's like someone picking on or someone trying to go into business. We're mentally ill and deficit. We have mental problems. So, yeah, beating someone up who's drunk and not able to defend themselves, exploiting and using an alcoholic while they're drunk and not able to think clearly is incomprehensible. Now and then, grateful benefactors had endowed clubhouses, and as a result, there was sometimes outside interference in our affairs. Okay, so now and then, people who made large donations were the benefactors, had furnished clubhouses with everything they needed, right? So, say we gave them a bunch of chairs, tables, money, paid their bills. Then, and I don't have any direct experience in this, but I could see how they could want to meddle into the affairs of Alcoholics Anonymous if they're the ones that are paying for stuff. We had been presented with a hospital. Wow. And almost immediately, the donor's son became its principal patient and would be manager. One AA group was given $5,000 to do with what it would. The hassle over that chunk of money played havoc for years. Frightened by these complications, some groups refused to have a cent in their treasuries. They just didn't want the drama. Despite these misgivings, we had to recognize the fact that AA had to function. Meeting places cost something. To save whole areas from turmoil, small offices had to be set up, telephones installed, and a few full-time secretaries hired. Over many protests, these things were accomplished. We saw that if they weren't, the man coming in the door couldn't get a break. These simple services would require small sums of money, which we could and would pay ourselves. Alas, the pendulum stopped swinging and pointed straight at Tradition 7 as it reads today. In this connection, Bill likes to tell the following pointed story. He explains that when Jack Alexander's Saturday Evening Peace broke in 1941, thousands of frantic letters from distraught alcoholics and their families hit the Foundation's letterbox in New York. That is, Saturday Evening Post paper wrote a big story about Alcoholics Anonymous in 1941. Our office staff, Bill says, consisted of 2 people, one devoted secretary and myself. How could this landslide of appeals be met? We'd have to have some more full-time help, that was sure, so we asked the AA groups for voluntary contributions. Would they send us $1 a member a year? That's not, it's $1 a year for each person. Otherwise, this heartbreaking mail would have to go unanswered. So now they can't help the guys that need help. To my surprise, the response of the groups was slow. Nobody wanted to give $1 a year. I got mighty sore about it. Looking at this avalanche of mail one morning at the office, I paced up and down, ranting how irresponsible and tightwad my fellow members were. Okay, let me rewrite that. I paced up and down, bitching how there were money grubbers, okay? Just then an old acquaintance stuck a tousled and aching head in the door. Tousled means untidy. He was our prize Slippy. I could see he had an awful hangover. Remembering some of my own, my heart filled with pity, compassion. I motioned him to my inside cubicle and produced a $5 bill. As my total income was $30 a week at the time, this was a fairly large donation. Lois really needed the money for groceries, but that didn't stop me. The intense relief on my friend's face warmed my heart. I felt especially righteous, as I thought of all the ex-drunks who wouldn't even send the foundation $1 apiece, and here I was, gladly making a $5 investment to fix a hangover. Virtuous is behavior in a moral and good ways, showing high moral standards. I have this self-righteous indignation written up here It's a state of mind where someone believes they are morally superior to others. It can lead to putting others down, making them feel bad, or becoming angry when others don't share their opinion. The meeting that night was at New York's old 24th Street clubhouse. During the intermission, the treasurer gave a timid talk on how broke the club was. That was in the period when you couldn't mix money in AA. But finally he said it. The landlord would put us out if we didn't pay up. He concluded his remarks by saying, "Now, boys, please go heavier on the hat tonight, will you?" I heard all this quite plainly as I was piously trying to convert a newcomer who sat next to me. Pious, uh, strong religious beliefs. The hat came in my direction and I reached into my pocket. Still working on my prospect, I fumbled and came up with the 50-cent piece. Somehow it looked like a very big coin. Hastily I dropped it back and fished out a dime, which clinked thinly as I dropped it in the hat. Hats never got folding money in those days. Then I woke up, I who had boasted my generosity that morning was treating my own club worse than the distant alcoholics who had forgotten to send the foundation their dollars. I realized that my $5 gift to the Slippy was an ego feeding proposition. Bad for him and bad for me. That means you're giving somebody something that makes you feel good about yourself. So when you're doing something for somebody else that makes you feel good about yourself, that is what an ego feeding proposition is. There was a place in AA where spirituality and money would mix, and that was in the hat. Not for ego feeding, but ego deflation. There's another story about money. One night in 1948, the trustees of the foundation were having their quarterly meeting. The agenda discussion included a very important question. A certain lady had died. When her will was read, it was discovered she had left Alcoholics Anonymous in trust with the Alcoholic Foundation a sum of $10,000. The question was, should AA take the gift? What a debate we had on that one. The foundation was really hard up just then. The groups weren't sending in enough for support to the office. We had been tossing in all the book income, and even that hadn't been enough. The reserve was melting like snow in springtime. We needed that $10,000. Maybe, some said, the groups will never fully support the office. We can't let it shut down. It's far too vital. Yes, let's take the money. Let's take all such donations in the future. We're going to need them. Then came the opposition. They pointed out that the foundation board already knew of a total of $500,000 set aside for AA in the wills of people still alive. Heaven only knew how much there was we hadn't heard about. If outside donations weren't declined, absolutely cut off, then the foundation would one day become rich. Moreover, at the slightest hint or intimation to the general public from our trustees that we needed money, we could become immensely rich. Compared to this prospect, the $10,000 under consideration wasn't much, but like the alcoholic's first drink, it would, if taken, inevitably set up a disastrous chain reaction. Where would that land us? Whoever pays the piper is apt to call the tune. So whoever gives the most money is likely to be in control, is what that's saying. And if the AA Foundation obtained money from outside sources, its trustees might be tempted to run things without reference to the wishes of AA as a whole. Relieved of responsibility, every alcoholic would shrug and say, "Oh, the foundation is wealthy, so why should I bother?" Oh my. Pressure of that fat treasury would surely tempt the board to invent all kinds of schemes to do good with such funds, and so divert AA from its primary purpose. Okay, so with good intentions, the board would want to do these things, extra things that would distract them from the primary purpose. My notes say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The difference between what someone intends to do and the outcome of their actions. So, as an alcoholic, I could say you know, I've had a lot of good intentions, and I've had a lot of delusions of thinking that I was doing something good when I wasn't, and it was that was hidden under a different selfish motive, you know. I gotta turn the air on. Ah, I cannot breathe. So, I'm learning. The learning never stops. Learning stops when we're in the ground. Okay, so the moment that happened, our fellowship confidence trust would be shaken. These were the possibilities pro and con, for and against, positive and negative. When our trustees wrote a bright page of AA history, they declared for the principle that AA must always stay poor. Bare running expenses plus a prudent reserve would henceforth be the foundation's financial policy. Difficult as it was, they officially declined that $10,000 and adopted a formal airtight resolution that all such future gifts would be similarly declined. I think that and I'm not sure, but I do think that we are allowed to have that much now. At that moment, we believed the principle of corporate poverty was firmly and finally embedded in AA tradition. When these facts were printed, I think that, and I'm not sure, but I think that we have a prudent reserve is 3 months, and if it's not, it should be 3 months of bills. Okay, and then an emergency fund when COVID hit. I'm not into all that part of AA, the money part. That I bet I know we had a really hard time. One of the clubs did have a really hard time paying the rent. When these facts were printed, there's a profound reaction to people familiar with endless drives for charitable funds. AA presented strange and refreshing spectacle. That's an outlook, a different way approving editorials here and abroad generated a wave of confidence in the integrity of Alcoholics Anonymous. Integrity means trustworthiness, the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. They pointed out that the irresponsible had become responsible, and that by making financial independence part of its tradition, Alcoholics Anonymous had revived an ideal that its era had almost forgotten. And I'm sorry I don't have more information on that tradition. I'm sure someone else with more time in the program does. Less than 30 minutes. I'm going to step 8.